Hey everyone, this is alexusadays, and we're continuing JavaScript for testers. Today we're going to talk about JavaScript loops. Now we're in module 7, and after that one we're going to move into module 8, JavaScript arrays. Okay, so JavaScript loops. JavaScript loops allow you to repeat actions without writing the same line of code over and over again. Loops enable the automation of repetitive tasks, dynamic test data generation, and the efficient validation of multiple elements or conditions without manually writing code for each case. JavaScript's loops are for loop. The for loop is one of the most common loops. It repeats a block of code a specified number of times. Inside parentheses, it has three parts: initialization, condition, and increment-decrement. And we will review it closely during the code part of the video. Second one is while loop. The while loop continues to execute a block of code as long as the condition specified within parentheses is true. The next one is do while. So do while is like while loop, but the do while loop will always execute the block of code once before checking if the condition is true. Then it repeats the loop as long as the condition is true. And the last two, one is for of loop. The for of loop in JavaScript is a modern loop introduced in ES6, designed to iterate over iterable objects such as array, strings, and more. An iterable object in JavaScript is anything that can be looped over. Think of it as a collection of items that you can go through one by one. Imagine you have a box of crayons. You can take out each crayon one after another. In this analogy, the box of crayons is like an iterable. The action of taking out crayons one by one is like iterating over the iterable. Then the next one is for in loop. The for in loop in JavaScript is used to iterate over the properties of an object. Think of it as checking each pocket in a jacket and finding the name of what's supposed to go in each pocket. Imagine you have a jacket designed for a trip. Each pocket is labeled for a specific item: passport, phone, sunglasses. With the for in loop, you can check the label on each pocket without necessarily taking out the item that's inside it. So for of loop is about taking out each crayon and looking at it. For in loop is about reading the label on each pocket to know what's supposed to go inside. Alright, so let's get into the code and see some examples in action. We are in Visual Studio Code, so let's go ahead and create new file. 7, and let's do loops underscore js.js. All right, so we're in loops. The first one is for loop, so let's do for loop, and let's start with for, and then within parentheses we need to explain the logic. What do we want from the loop? So first we need to initialize the variable that we will start looping through. So normally we would go with I as an iterable, right? And it starts with 0. So we have a variable I that has a 0 value number stored in it. Now the second is the condition. So while essentially I is less than 3, we're going to do the increment. So we will say I plus plus. Okay, so how do we read this? So essentially we start with I being 0. Here's the variable. And then this loop will execute while I is less than 3. And on each execution, it will increment or make the value of I higher by 1. So it will be, first loop run will be I1, I2. So first one will be I0, I1, I2, and then, okay, 2 is actually less than 3, the last number that is less than 3. Then it's going to go I3, and nope, I is not less than 3, so we're not executing it. Okay, so let's have some code after the loop that we will run through. So let's say console.log. This is for a loop going through iteration, and then let's add plus I. All right, let's run it. node 7 tab, and here we go. So this is for loop going through iteration 0, the very first one, right? The first run it runs was 0. Then it does the increment, so +1. So this is for loop going through iteration 1. This is for loop going through iteration 2. So we can have, let's say, 11 here, right? So it will do run through 10 times. Clear it out, and let's run one more time. Right, stops at 10. So as you see, it's very powerful. In just a small line of code, you can do so many executions. All right, let's clear it out again, and I'm going to comment this out for now. Can we? All right. So the next one is while loop. While loop. Now, while loop is different. It will execute until the condition within parentheses is true. So let's do let I equals 0. So this will be outside of the loop, right? So we have a value of I that is equal to the 0, and we're going to say while I is less than 3, we're going to run the loop. So console.log, and this, let's copy this text here. The only thing I'm going to change this is while loop. I'm going to update the name, while loop, going through iteration. So you see, in this while loop, I'm not updating the I. I'm just saying while I is less than 3. So if I'll run it as is right now, what will happen, it will run infinitely, indefinitely, until the program gonna just shut it down because this loop make your computer go insane. So your computer gonna run out of memory. So before that happens, it's just gonna shut it down, right? What you do in the while loop, you provide an update for the value that is outside of the loop. And how we can do that? Well, we can say just over here, I++. We already have I declared here. Here we're just updating the value of the I, of the variable. So we keep on incrementing. So increment is inside the loop. So now in each iteration, it will be incrementing this value. And once this value hits 3, the while loop will stop because this is true, right? That's first iteration. This is true, that's the second. This is true, that's the third. And now this is false. As soon as this false, the run stops, right? It's not going to run one more time. Again, if you're not providing this increment, if you're not going and adding +1 to your I or your iterable, right, on every run, it's going to break. So make sure you have this I++ here, right? Or you can say new value of I is equal I +1, right? So this is just a short way of writing it, just I++. Okay, let's run it. And here we go, right? So let's say I remove that, right, and try to run it. Just going, not stopping, just continuously going. All right, I'll do Control-C to break the command, to break the loop. But you can see, as long as your computer can handle it, it's just going to run and run and run and run forever. Okay, so this is the main difference of a while loop. As long as this is true, it will keep on running. Okay, let's add our I++ here. And we want to comment this code out as well. All right, so the next loop is do while. So do while is pretty similar, right? The main difference is that your code will be executed once before it gets into the while loop, all right? So how does that look? So let's say let I, and again, you can have any name for the variable that you're iterating through. It doesn't matter. You can say bananas here, right? So let bananas equal to 0, right? So we're going to say do, and you can see how the syntax is a little bit, well, the layout of the loop is a little bit different. So we start with do, and then we open the curly braces. So essentially your code is running first, right? And that's why it will execute your code at least once, because do runs first. So let's say console.log. So we're going to say it's do while loop, and let's add going through iteration, whatever the iteration we're going through. So instead of I have to put the variable name here, right? Plus bananas. Okay, good. And now we need an increment. So again, you have to have an increment, otherwise your while loop's still going to run indefinitely. So we'll do bananas plus plus. So the same thing as we were doing with I, right? Increasing the value. And now after do, we need to do while. So while, and here's our parentheses with the conditions, while bananas are less than 3. Again, because we're incrementing on each run, right? So let's run it. Okay, do while loop iteration 0, 1, and 2. You can start decreasing value. For example, you can do minus minus and then have here a value of 10 as the value that you're initializing here with. So then let's say while bananas are what we can do. So if we're going from 10 to, let's say while bananas are not equal, so exclamation equal to 0, right? So as soon as the 0 is going to stop, so the last one will be a 1 that will be displayed. Run it, and 10, 9, 8, 7, and then there's 1. So while this is not equal to 0, run through the loop, and it does 10, 9, and so on. You can see it, right? Okay, let's clear it out, and let's do next loop. All right, so the next two, they're a bit tricky for of and then for in, right? So for in, we will iterate over an object, and for of loop, we can iterate over an array, let's say, even though we're going to cover those later, but to get kind of started with it. So for in, right, a loop, and we're going through iterate over an object. Again, we will be covering what object is and what is an array in later videos, but for now let's just create an object. So let's say let object, and again you can have any name variable. So in your object you would normally have like key value pairs. That means you have a name of a variable and then a value that goes in there. So A will store 1, B will store like 2, C will store 3. So essentially it's like a set of variables here within the object, right? And now we can say for, and within our parentheses we'll say let, so key, we'll say we want to see a key in this object. So essentially this is a placeholder. It can be whatever name you want, but we name it a key because we will be returning key, right? And for the code execution, I'm going to say console.log, and let's print the key first, and then we will see how we can print the whole thing, right? I'm going to copy just this. So let's update it to for in loop going through key and then the key value. And let's run it. Okay, A, B, and C. So key value, right? So that's the key, and we're going through key A, that's the key we're going through key B, that's the key we're going through key C. All right, so how do we actually can see what's inside, right? Let's say plus, let's say space, this is value inside, space, and then let's do plus. Now here, we actually need to add object, right? And then within square brackets, we add key. So let's run it now. Okay, so for in loop going through the key A, this is the value inside 1. So to get to the value, we provide object and the key, right? And each execution that it goes, it just substitutes in the order that goes through it. It substitutes this key by grabbing the first one, and then the object key by grabbing this whole thing, right? So return 1 essentially. Same thing here. Second iteration goes and grabs just the key first, so B, and then we get to the key through this object key, because here we're just saying, well, what is our key 1? What is our key A? What's inside of it? What is our key? What is the value for key B? What is the value for key C? And then it goes and grabs the value, right? Because it's a key value pair. So this is how you get to the value, right? And this is just displaying the key. All right, so I know it's a little bit more complicated than just going through the loop, but we're going to get into the objects. We're going to go into the arrays. It's going to be easier. We will have more examples with that once we will be going through objects and arrays. Now we're going to go with for off loop. For off loop. Now we're going to iterate over an array. So array is a little different from the object. It just we can say let array n equal so within the square brackets we just a b and c. Like this is an array of letters essentially, right, or strings a, b, and c. There is an index, and index is the position of the value. So this is 0, this is 1, this is 2. So index is there by default. Each value has an index where it's placed in the array, right? So object has key value pairs. An array has this invisible index, which indicates the position where this value is located in array. And index is the counting starts from 0. So this will be index 0, this will be index 1, this will be index 2. So now let's go and check all of the values here. And let's say let value of array. And this is actually like pretty easy way of doing it. We're just saying the array, we're just saying the name of the variable, and then we have this placeholder. The for off loop here will just go through every value, iterate through every value in the array, just through this simple implementation. So for, then you have value, and then off, right, array. So you can see the value is actually being here declared inside the parentheses, right? All right, in curly braces, let's write our console log. So let's print it out, console.log, and let's say so for off loop, this is first value. This is value. How are we going to print this out? This is value space, and let's add just value. So let's do it like that. Let's comment this out, save it, and let's run it. Okay, for off loop, this is value A, this is value B, this is value C. So it goes through this array and prints out every value one by one. Let's say I want to print some value just without a loop based on the index in the array, right? So I can say console.log, and let's do array and index 1, right? So I'm going to comment this out, clear, and here we have it. So this is index 0, this is index 1, we have B. Kind of similar for this, like if I'm going into an object, I can say console.log, and I can say object. But here, instead of index, I need to provide the key, right? So our key, let's say key, I'm going to use C. So that would be this one. I want to print it out and run it. C is not defined. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, 3. So yeah, the key have to be in quotes. All right, let's clear it out. Now, an extra bonus, an example. Sometimes you will see a nested array, so array inside of an array. So let's take a look how we can kind of understand this and visualize this, right? So a nested array, so nested, let's do nested for loop, right? Let's declare first couple of things here. So we're gonna declare two arrays. So we're gonna say, let's say let letters. So that's gonna be our first array. Then within this array, we're gonna store A, B, and C. So three values. And then we're gonna declare an array called let numbers. And then within this array, which is going to store numbers 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so how do we visualize a nested loop with those two arrays? So it's essentially we have outer and inner loop. One will be for letters, the other one will be for numbers. So what will happen, we will start with the outer loop and we'll say, hey, we're iterating through A, and then we go into the inner loop and it says A1, A2, and 3. And then the inner loop is completed, and let's go back to the outer loop. Hey, now it's B turn. And again, it iterates with B through the inner loop, B1, B2, B3. And then it goes to C as an outer loop as the next value, and then goes back into the inner loop and says C1, C2, C3. So you're going to kind of visually see how it works, right? But let's just show it for. So let I equals 0. So this is our iterable, right? So I is less than letters. And like we don't know, sometimes the lengths can be something different. We know here it is 3 values, right? But let's say I don't know the lengths of the array. We can just say letters dot length. And that will grab the length of this array, so 1, 2, 3 characters. It will say essentially this says I is less than 3, right? And the next is, let's do I plus plus. So we increment the value on each run. We open curly braces, and now here we start the inner loop. So here we say for, and then let's say let j equals to 0. J is less than numbers dot length, right? So now we're taking the length of this array. So essentially it says J is less than 3, right? And do again J plus plus. So again incrementing, right? And let's do a console log print for both of those. So let's do console.log. And let's use backtick, right? So here we'll have one value provided, and so let's do this is outer loop variable. So here we're going to place letters, right? And to see what letter it is, we need to access the I, right? So within the square brackets, we put I. So letters.I, and then, and this is inner loop variable. And we want to say, so again, $, curly braces, and here we want to say numbers, right? Numbers. And for numbers, we have J, right? For each iteration, we're iterating J here. All right, let's see what we get as an output. Run it. Okay, here we go. This is outer loop variable A, and this is inner loop variable 1. And then it again with A, it goes through the second one. So this is outer loop variable A, and this inner loop variable 2. So you see how it does it. So A, and it goes. Okay, we got first variable in the outer loop, and then it goes to the inner 1, 2, 3. Okay, this one is done. Then it goes, okay, B, and then again it goes inside 1, 2, 3, and then C, and inside 1, 2, 3. So that's kind of how it runs through it, right? It iterates through the nested loops. So you might encounter nested loops. I mean, it's quite common for whatever reasons that you might need to use it for, like verification on, or like getting some values out. So it's just good that to practice it, to understand how it works, to be familiar that there is a way to nest loops and kind of go through the variables like that. All right, so this is it for this video. This was Alex USA Days, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.